I moved back home at like 37, 38, which at the time felt very humiliating, but also like once I was living there and not paying bills, I was like, I don't feel humiliated at all. Like I feel very empowered without these bills. Like,
y'all know about Side Hustle Pro? Oh, it's time, baby. Join Side Hustle Pro host Nicaila Matthews-Okome for a powerhouse conversation with author, journalist, and media maven Demetria Lucas. From A Belle and BK to building a multi-platform empire, she's mastered the pivot. Get ready for the real talk on side hustles, bold moves, and making success your own. Everybody give it up for Nicaila Matthews-Okome.
Testing. Can you hear me? Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for being here today. I am so honored to have you here. This is actually my first live show recording. So I am so happy to bring out my very first live guest, Demetria L. Lucas. If you don't know, Demetria is an award-winning journalist, author, media personality, and serial entrepreneur. You can find her as a TV contributor, as a contributor on the hit Amazon Prime show Harlem, and also traveling the world so she can see some world. Demetria, welcome to the guest chair.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Yes. So how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful.
Now, I have followed your career for a while.
Thank you.
And I have seen many iterations of Demetria. And I love that because you've always been an inspiration to me in pivoting and reinvention.
Yeah.
So let's take it back, though. You started a blog back in the day when you were working. Was it at Essence at the time? No.
I started my career editing romance novels. I was working at Harlequin.
Really?
So my very first blog was about dating and relationships.
Yeah.
Sex in the City, like the original Sex in the City, was still on the air, so that far back.
Yeah.
But my life was dating and relationships because of what I was into, and then also my day job. And most of the women that worked in my office were significantly older than me. They had a very different perspective on dating and relationships, and I just didn't feel like myself being represented.
Yes.
Not in my work environment, and also not in my my media consumption space, especially because of Sex in the City. Like, there were no, like, Black people on the show, you know? And I was like, we date, we have relationships, we fall in love. Like, where's our representation? And so that's what the blog was started out of. So I started the blog, and then 6 months later, I landed the job as a relationship editor at Essence.
Knowing that, that's just so full circle for what you're doing now, writing for Harlem, but I love that. And so when you started the blog, where did you think it would go, or why was that, just a thing you wanted to do?
I'm a writer, so I write. Like, I went to school for journalism. My undergrad is in English. Like, it's what I do to feel full. That's my creative outlet. So when I started the blog, I just wanted to have a voice. Like, I was complaining to everyone who would listen. I was like, well, there's no this, and why aren't people talking about this, and why aren't people showing this, and we do this, and where's our representation? And finally, like, a very good friend was like, you're a writer. Why don't you write? And so that's how the blog was born. But I never thought to do anything with it. I wasn't trying to make a career out of it. I just wanted to have a voice.
Yeah. Back then, side hustling, it's always been a thing. We've always hustled, but it wasn't so much like I'm going to build out my personal brand and then leave my job and all of that. Yeah. So when you first got the idea to write your first book, how did that come about?
My readers, they told me, like, write a book. And I was like, okay, like, you think that's a good idea? Right. But my first book was a dating memoir about my 20s, and that's mostly what my blog was about. So I was at Essence, and I was working a full-time job, and then I was still had a side hustle as a freelancer for other places on the side, like things that were completely unrelated to Essence, so it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. So I wrote most of my book on my BlackBerry going to and from work. Like, lived deep in Brooklyn, and my job was in Midtown. It was 45 minutes to an hour each way, so on my thumbs every day. Did
you pitch it to a publisher first, or okay?
Yeah.
And so how did your job feel about that? Did it feel weird at all?
I didn't tell them. I didn't exactly tell them up front. So I had worked in book publishing, so I knew, all the book publishers,
That's true.
So I reached out to people that I knew, and I said, well, hey, what do you think, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, put a proposal together.
Yeah.
And literally the first person I sent it to, over at Simon & Schuster, they were like, okay, we'll buy it. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't even have an agent. Like, I was just asking you to look at it. And so she was like, you don't need an agent. Like, you just, whatever. So I had a lawyer look at it and all that stuff. So I had the blog, and the blog was big, and I was working for Essence, and I had a column in the magazine. and the Washington Post did a feature story on me. And in the feature story, I mentioned I had a book coming out. And so I feel like that was the time I should tell my boss that, like, hey, by the way, like, but she was actually totally supportive. Yeah. Like, she was like, you know, like anything that you do, especially in the dating relationship space, it's good branding for you, but it's also good branding for us. So whatever you're going to go do, as long as you say, like, you know, and I work for Essence, then it was fine.
And I love that approach. I feel like some companies just don't get that. And obviously you did end up leaving, but I do think that put like a fun, sexy vibe on Essence at a time when people thought, hey, this is like an older woman's thing. You know what I mean? And I remember your events as well.
Oh, yeah. Cocktails with Belle.
Did you start to monetize those? Like, did your wheels start turning about? No, still.
Never monetized Cocktails with Belle. Uh-huh.
By the way, I remember not being able to get into those.
They sold out very quickly. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, why? But from there, then you continued working. At what point did you start to get the entrepreneurship bug?
It's a whole lifetime ago. I can talk about this stuff freely now.
Yeah.
So I was working at Essence, and it was kind of a glamorous job, you know, from the outside looking in. But on the inside, like, I was working at a cubicle, right? And I wasn't getting paid very well because editorial just doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
And so the book came out, and I'd also become a certified life coach. And I was getting these offers to do speaking engagements. And the book had come out, and I'd used all my vacation days going on book tour, right?
Yeah,
So then I got this offer for the speaking engagement. They offered me a ton of money.
Wow.
And my boss told me I couldn't go. And I was like, what they're offering me is like almost my annual salary to speak for, like, to do it. And it wasn't even the keynote. Like, I was like, oh, there's more from here. Like, I'm just getting like the mid-range. And I was like, what you mean I can't go? So it was like, you know, do I call in my sick days? Do I whatever? I did do the event, and they were very upset, but I didn't get like suspended or fired or anything. But it was like it became like a conflict. And it was a different boss than the one that had supported me before. She had moved on to a different position. And the new person that came in was kind of like, why ain't this girl ever at her desk? Like, she's never here. She's never at her desk. And my immediate boss was very supportive because she got it. But the new boss was like, no, like, you work here and you need to be here. And I was like, no, y'all don't pay me enough. I'm going over there.
Yes.
So,
Okay. So I understand that toggle very well. And you reach a point where it's like, I'm doing this well now. Imagine if I left and continued doing it full time. But at the same time, was it scary? I mean, I know the salary wasn't that much, but still it's steady, right? You know that check is going to land in your account.
I always believe in keeping a steady check. Like, I haven't had a real job, quote unquote, since 2011, but I've always had some sort of monthly check coming in. So even when I left Essence, I switched over to essence.com.
Okay.
So like, I left on a Friday for Essence, and then essence.com, I started writing a weekly column that also paid more than what I was making full time. And I was like, wait, I make more as a freelancer? I mean, I had no benefits, but like, I make more as a freelancer?
Right.
Like, I was like, I can figure out this other part of it. Yeah.
See, they don't tell you that.
Yeah.
And let's stay on this point for a second, because I think that is also very encouraging. A lot of times people think it's all or nothing, right? Like, and that's why I wanted to start the podcast too, because people think entrepreneurship looks like betting it all, quitting your job and living
I don't believe in
ramen
rope.
noodles. Me either. I believe in nail appointments and pedicures. So
Massages, travel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So talk to the people about how you keep that consistent check, even to this day, right? Are you still freelance writing, or because of the books and all that kind of residual income, does that also help with the steady?
Well, I have a podcast. My podcast is Ratchet and Respectable, and that's what I do full time. And then I have other side hustles on top of that. So I have a travel company where I take people to trips to Ghana and then also to Cape Town. We've done 5 of those so far. I have the merchandising for my podcast. I do consultant on TV shows. So there's like a whole bunch of things that cobble together enough to pay for manicures and waxes and all of those things.
Let's delve into each of those a little bit more. So you go from being an author and you start becoming this media personality, TV contributor. How did you step into that world? Did you pitch yourself? Did you get an agent?
Yes, I had an agent for my speaking engagements. It was like the early days of influencing, but we didn't call it, I don't remember what we called it back then, but it was the early days of that. So I started, doing stuff on social media, and I built a following pretty quickly because I was transitioning from the blog over to socials.
Yeah.
So that part, had an agent for. But the other stuff, like the MSNBC, CNN, stuff like that, they started calling me because I was doing the writing for Essence. Yeah. So I had my own platform, or had a platform.
Right.
But I was very opinionated, as you know. Yes. And then I was freelancing. I was contributing editor at The Root. I was writing for Vibe. And then I was freelancing New York Times, Washington Post as well. So I always had a platform. So they would just call me and be like, oh, you talked about X today. Come on TV and talk about that. So everything just sort of built on its own.
Yes.
And at first I didn't realize what was happening. And then once I locked in and I was like, oh, I need to always have a voice somewhere in order to hopscotch platform, frogger it where I needed to be.
You talk often about your parents and your relationship with them. Yeah. You write letters, dear mom, I'm okay, all of this on Instagram. So with having these traditional parents, how do you explain your career to them?
Oh, they're fine now.
They're fine now.
So up until I got the job at Essence, it was like, what are you doing with your life? Right. And I was like, so I went to school, I went to undergrad at University of Maryland.
Yeah.
Maryland girl, PG County. And I was majoring in English and I lied to my parents. I knew I was lying at the time. I told them I was going to go to law school, right? So we'll do the English thing. We'll learn how to write so I can write Grease or what. It was BS. But they went for it somehow because it was like, oh, she's going to be a lawyer. So my senior year of college, I studied abroad in London and I waited until I got overseas to email my parents. I had to go to Topshop because we didn't have Wi-Fi in my apartment. But I had to go to Topshop and go type to my parents. I was like, by the way, I'm not going to law school. I didn't send in any of the letters. But I did apply to grad school in journalism at NYU and Columbia. So if you really want me to do secondary, then that's where I'll go. But I'll only go if I get into one of these schools and I have to go to New York. So they went ballistic. But I'm overseas, there's not so much you can do. And they were like, oh my God, Demetria, you're ruining your life. So up until I got the job at Essence, it was kind of like, when are you going to get a real job? Writing is a hobby. That's not a real job. Right. And I was like, it pays barely, but it paid the bills.
We have more in common than I thought, because my dad liked to say, when are you going to get serious, though?
Yeah.
This is cool, but when are you going to get serious?
Oh, no. When I started traveling all over the world and I would fly my mom out, that's when I guess she's doing okay. That little podcast, you and your microphone, it's actually, that actually works out.
Now, as younger journalists are coming up in the game, I'm sure some of them reach out to you about building a platform, having a personal brand. What advice do you give people these days? Because it's a lot more crowded and competitive.
It was crowded and competitive when I was doing it. It's always crowded and competitive.
Yeah.
Write with passion. Write with passion, write with, be opinionated.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as women, there's a lot of backlash that comes with being opinionated as a woman online, being a woman online in general. But have something to say and say it with conviction. Don't be wishy-washy. If you take a stance, that's your stance, or argue it to the death. But that's how you stand out in a crowded space. Have a good voice. And then also go back and read great writers. Writing is, even if you're just naturally talented at it, it's a honed skill and it continues to get better over time. But you only do that by writing often and reading often. Improve your vocabulary, improve your wordplay, improve your wit, improve your knowledge base. You can never be too informed.
And how do you feel about social media curation and building out your personal brand there? You're okay with people not liking your opinion, and for some people that's kind of hard.
It's I have a Wendy Williams approach to it. So think about this, right? So with Wendy Williams, everyone feels a way about Wendy Williams. No one just feels neutral, right? Mm-hmm. So even if you agree with her, even if you don't agree with her, something happens, and the first thing you would say is, what is Wendy going to say? Mm-hmm. And so you tune in the next day.
Or man, I wish Wendy was still.
Man, I wish Wendy was here. All this New York stuff, Wendy would have a field day. But she hasn't been on air in 5 years now, and we're still
exactly.
I wish Wendy was
hate her or love her,
Exactly.
You want to hear from her secretly, even if you act like you don't like her. So that
you curse her out and you dog her and you talk about how awful she is for having these terrible opinions.
Exactly.
But then you also tune in the next day to see what else she's going to say.
Yeah. So how long were you focusing on books and then being a TV contributor before you decided to pitch yourself to contribute on shows, or did they also reach out to you?
They came to me.
They came to you. Yeah. Isn't life grand?
Yeah, isn't life grand? Yeah.
But you had started your podcast by then. And I remember your post when you were thinking about starting your podcast. I think it was something like, do y'all listen to podcasts? Are there any good ones?
Are there any good ones? This is 2019. There were 50 million podcasts at the time. And I was like, it's a thing. Is it a thing?
Should I do this? What was your mindset going into podcasting?
Again, my audience had been harassing me to do a podcast. I wasn't writing the same. I was writing on social media, but Instagram captions. But they were like, no, we want to you write. And that's what we were originally drawn to you for.
We want to hear more.
And we want to hear your voice. So just do something. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll do it for 90 days. And that was 6 years and 500 and change episodes ago.
I love that. I'll do it for 90 days. Yeah. It's like commitment, but also commitment like.
Yeah. It's like enough for a habit, you know, like if you figure out if you like it or not, like what it requires.
And when I think about you now, I think about this thing that you said you'll do for 90 days as a huge part of your current business and brand. So how did that shift happen? The shift into being predominantly a host and podcaster and making that recurring revenue that you now depend on for a substantial part of your revenue.
I'm so basic. It started making money. Like, I mean, that's what it really boils down to. Like, I started doing the podcast, and I was fortunate in that I already had a following on social media. So I didn't have to like build out like from scratch, like no one knows who I am and I'm just building it up from there. So I had a social media and I advertised to, you know, the audience that was already there. And it was like a couple 100,000 people. Right. So I was like, you know, if I can get like, you know, 10% to pay attention to something, you know, this could go somewhere. So it got monetized pretty quickly and started doing well. So it started to overtake other things because you focus on where the money is.
Absolutely. And something else that I remember, you posted that, hey, not only did you say, I'm going to start this, let's do it, but you're like, I designed this logo in Canva.
I did. I did. Yeah.
I just want everyone to hear that because so many times people overthink it. So I coach podcasters, right, who are growing their podcast. And a lot of times they're like, oh, I got to schedule my photo shoot. I'm doing this. I got this equipment. And you are recording your podcast no matter what kind of Wi-Fi you have, no matter which country you're in. And say that again, like you monetize fast and it's now a big part of your...
So the thing is like people like the rawness of it. So it's not to say that I didn't want to do like the flashy, glitzy, exactly. I didn't want to go into a studio. Right. I didn't want to have like the soft light and the soft camera and all of that. I didn't have the budget.
Yeah.
You know, I would have loved to have like a fancy designer, but I just moved cross country to LA and I shipped all my half my stuff. I shipped my car. I didn't have a bed yet. So I was like, am I going to pay a graphic designer or am I like, you know, get like a bed frame? You know, like it's just decisions. What do we do? What do we do? So I was like, let me try to be a responsible adult. And, you know, like I had a picture and I went on, was it Fiverr? And I had, you know, I paid somebody $20 to turn it into a cute little graphic. And I paid for the copyright. I paid extra. I didn't like, you know. Yeah. But yeah, so I designed the other part. Like I knew what I wanted it to look like. And I was like, oh, I'll keep it, you know, just to start. And then like when the money comes out. And I changed it once and people were like pissed. And I was like, oh, like that lasted literally like 4 hours and I changed it back. Because they were, what is this? Yeah. No one asked for this.
It was like the Power theme song.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. It's like, why would you change the Power theme song? Like who does that? And literally the next episode it was gone. And I was like, all right, so y'all don't like that.
Exactly.
Like I keep trying to play around with it and they don't like it.
And it doesn't look like, you know, something you just got on the fly. But the reason I wanted to emphasize that is not because it's not good, but it's because at the end of the day, the core thing that people resonate with is you, your message, your stories, right? The content. And it's not, oh, wow, I really like her camera. I really like that, you know, that HD. Like, it looks so good, right? Yeah. So now as you're thinking about the next layer of your podcast, because I did hear you say we're
moving to video. The goal is April 1st. Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Right. How do you think about it now and why do you want to move to video?
The podcast world has shifted. And I feel like, honestly, I'm a little behind still being on audio, but I was bouncing around. I've been living overseas for the last 2.5 years. Yeah. So it wasn't really practical to do. But now I'm like, you know, changing over the extra bedroom. We're turning it into a studio.
Okay.
So, yeah. It still ain't going to be like soft light and glitz. Like just, no, it's good light, good light.
The home studio. I was talking to Brittany Luce too, and she's records It's Been a Minute for NPR from her apartment. Yeah. And listen, it's all about the home studio.
Some of the best podcasts, like the ones I listen to, like I love.
He built a little closet for himself or a garage.
Yeah. Higher Learning, like Rachel and Van be everywhere. Like Van was in a hotel room the other day. Like you see the bed in the background, right? Yep. But I'm not tuning in to see, I mean, no offense to Van. But I'm there for the voice.
I'm here for
and I like
content.
His facial expressions. And I like to see him look outraged.
Exactly.
Right? I like to see Rachel look appalled. Like, that's what I'm there for. It's not necessarily like, thank you for having a cute background. Thank you for cleaning it and dusting it and all of that. But I'm really there for the you.
Yeah. And I like seeing that, actually. I do pay attention to that because I am a content creator, podcaster, but it just encourages me. I'm like, oh, she got a little iPhone headset? Okay.
I do look in the background. I do be all up in people's background.
Like, I could do that.
Like, that's a choice. Why that art? Why, you know?
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Skillshare. The online learning community is offering Side Hustle Pro listeners a free trial of premium membership. Now, many of you already know that one of my biggest side hustle hacks is Skillshare. I've been using Skillshare for years now, and that's because it's the truth. I love it so much, I've created a free short course to give you the play-by-play on how to launch your own high-quality video podcast. It's called The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Podcasting, and if you've ever wondered how I get the clear, crisp video you see on the Side Hustle Pro podcast without going into a fancy studio, this is the course for you. The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Podcasting is a course where I'm sharing my favorite budget-friendly equipment picks, my step-by-step training on recording and editing a podcast, and how to create engaging episodes and eye-catching social media clips. The best part, the course is free if you go to sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. So are you ready to get started? Visit sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare to enroll. Again, Side Hustle Pro listeners, you'll get 1 month free of premium membership over at sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. Again, that's 1 month free over at sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. Let's talk about the business nitty-gritty for a bit, right? Do you have a team at this point? Or are you doing everything yourself? Accounting, pitching?
My mom's an accountant.
Okay. You put them to work.
My mommy's an accountant. She's retired. Okay. She needs something to do.
Right.
She's going to be like, what, Demetria, why are you telling these people this? But no, like my mom's an accountant and yeah, she handles like the numbers and things.
Right.
I have a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I have a kind of sort of manager. My lawyer kind of does both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then as far as pitching yourself for opportunities or speaking or any of that, do you do that yourself or you kind of field what comes to you?
You know what my answer's about.
I know.
I'm very fortunate in that I have like a really great following and I have really amazing people like just in my following. Sometimes like, I'm like a brain surgeon. I got a question about whatever. And like 3 brain surgeons appear.
Right.
And I'm like, where did y'all come from? And why are y'all following like my drivel? Because I'm not really talking about anything super deep. But I ask for what I need and it just kind of.
The key thing I'm hearing from you is just like, we all need to put ourselves out there some more. And it's not easy to do.
No.
It's not easy to do, but there's so much rewards that you can reap when you actually do that. So I think that's one of the takeaways that I'm getting from this conversation, kind of like a reminder from the universe.
Yeah.
And, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, I feel like I try to take the first step in the direction of things that I want. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like it's like, I don't know, like a shift in the atmosphere, Like Steve Harvey will refer to it as like, you drop off the cliff. And like, yeah, you could hit the ground, like maybe, but what if like, a safety net sweeps in?
Right.
But I put out there what I want. And I'm not afraid to say like, this is something that I want to do. Like on my podcast, like when I was interested in getting into TV writing, I'm taking classes for TV writing. Yeah. I would interview showrunners. And I would, on the podcast, I would say like, well, when can I come to the fancy writing event? It's the woman who does All American. And I was like, when can I come to the fancy writing event? And she was like, when you get in a writer's room. So like, but it's out there, and you never know who's listening to the podcast. And people say like, oh, Demetria's taking writing classes and she's trying to get into a writer's room. And then fast forward, Tracy calls me, Tracy Oliver, who girls trip in Harlem. She texted me and was like, hey, like, do you want to do Harlem? Right. I didn't know what she meant. I was like, do you want me on camera, you want me behind the camera, the writer's room? Whatever the answer is, yes, Tracy. Right. What is it that you want me to do? Right. So she was like, yeah, come consult on the show, like help us shape the story and things like that. And I was like, I could do that.
Yeah. And another thing I'm hearing from the fact that people are reaching out to you is they reach out to you because they know who you are. And they know who you are because you tell people who you are because you put yourself out there. So it's not like they're just like out the box finding you somewhere.
Who's this random girl?
No, they know who you are. Yeah. So that's a takeaway as well. If you want people to know who you are, you got to tell them who you are.
Tell them what you want to do.
Yeah. I have this daydream I'm going to share with y'all. Like I have this daydream that Barack Obama, he's going to hire me. His team is going to hire me for something, right? And then, we'll just be chilling in the green room. Then he'll walk in and I'll say, hi, Mr. Obama. And he'll cut me off and he'll say, I know who you are.
I know who you are. Say less. I listen to your podcast.
But that is a manifestation I think about all the time.
It's not impossible.
And it's
I literally know someone who's that happened to.
I think we have the same room.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yes, because
But and when she reached out,
she told me that. I was like, it's possible. It's possible. It's possible. Yes, I was like, I'm in the circle. I'm 1 degree removed.
It's coming to me next. Oh, I know it's coming.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, they know. Okay,
so you check that box. Now you need a pop culture box. Like, I'm your girl.
I'm your girl. Yeah. So tell us about why you started going on this world tour.
I wanted to go on a world tour.
Why? When did it start? Was it the pandemic? You wanted to get out of the country, or what happened?
I moved to LA, and I need to preface this. I moved to LA 11 months before COVID happened, and I was broke. Right? So LA with money is entirely different than LA without money, right? So I moved to LA broke, so I wasn't really fully enjoying it. And then the pandemic happened, and by the time I left, it never really fully opened up.
Okay.
So I have to say that to explain, I didn't really love LA. Like, I'm an East Coast girl. Like, I'm from PG County. I lived in New York for 17 years, and then I went to LA. I stayed there maybe like 2.5 years, and then I left to go to Ghana. So lived in DC, lived in New York, lived in LA, didn't love it, wanted to move somewhere else, and I like ran through the list of American cities, and I just... nothing worked. But I'd been to Ghana several times. My best friend is from there.
Okay.
And I'd gone out with the trips, right? And I'd gone out to visit her several times, and I never wanted to leave. Every time I would extend my visa as far as I could. Yeah. And then I was like, I like it there. So why don't I just like go? And it seemed logical because, you know, once it's COVID, like you realize you don't have to be on the places you thought you had to be to do your work.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was like, I mean, as long as they have Wi-Fi, which they had Wi-Fi. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do the podcast from there.
Yeah.
And I'll do it from there and wherever else I go in the continent or world.
Yeah. I was listening to a group of Black women travelers who said something similar. Like, people have a fear of, well, what if I run out of money? And there's this woman who was like, you know what? I saved up. I went. And when I ran out of money, I came back and got a job. And I was like, poof, mind blowing, right? Like, you think you have to, everything has to look this way, but you need some more money.
You come back and work. Like, come back and get more.
Live the life that you want to live. Yeah. And like every single, you know, challenge that might present itself in your mind, you can respond. You can talk back to that rather than just accepting it.
I also saved like a ton of, like, so it seems to, because I didn't like announce like a year and a half, like I'm thinking about moving to Ghana, right? Yeah. But I kind of thought about it and I was like, well, okay, like let's tuck some money away. The podcast had also taken off during COVID because people ain't got nothing better to do than like listen to podcasts. Right. I'd also started merchandising. So I'm running a whole merchandising business. I remember
that.
I was running out of my studio apartment. It was
printing. You were printing your own hoodies and stuff.
Yeah, it was insane. Like looking back, it sounds like I don't believe I did that, but I did, right? But I didn't have a place to spend the money, and I had enough sense because I'd already made money before and blown it the first time to not blow it this time. Okay. So I stashed it all away. Okay. So I had like a stash, and then also there was a whole separate account in case if you get stuck all the way over there in Africa. You got a ticket home, right? Like I never bought like just a one-way ticket. Like I always could. Yeah, and my daddy would send for me. He don't play about me.
Yeah. We know. If you follow Demetria, you know.
Yeah, my daddy don't play about me. Nope. So yeah, I was getting home. Yeah. But I'd be broke when I got here, yes. But I was getting home. So if I'm over there and I get stuck, I'm going to get unstuck.
Speaking about money, we have to talk about this money piece because I don't think enough entrepreneurs talk about these cycles of money. Like sometimes it's really great and sometimes you're broke. Yeah. So you mentioned that you moved to LA broke. Why were you broke? Like what?
I got a divorce.
Ah, okay.
And I gave him the apartment and I paid a whole lot of money to a lawyer not to pay alimony.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. But you picked yourself back up and look at you now.
I went to my daddy's house. Because again, he don't play about me. In my father's house, there are many rooms. Yes. But no, I went, I moved back home at like 37, 38, which at the time felt very humiliating. But also like once I was living there and not paying bills, I was like, I don't feel humiliated at all. Like I feel very empowered without these bills. Good. Like the refrigerator is always full. There's warm food every night.
And like, your bank account is just going up.
Someone's constantly asking me, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" There's always gas in my car. It's always washed. I was like, "Why did I leave to go to LA again?" Which I live with my parents right now too. Like it's fine. Yeah. So I went through like a bad spell with a bad marriage and then the divorce and then. I didn't want to turn 40 living in my parents' house. It was just like a mental thing that I had. And I was like, okay, like you're like officially like middle-aged and good and grown. Like, you need your own place. Yeah. Which probably wasn't the best decision. But I decided to move to LA because I didn't want to come back to New York. Yeah. I figured go to like the other entertainment capital. And it was cool. I just didn't have money. So it took a while. So I was waiting on, I had signed a contract for my second book is called Don't Waste Your Pretty, and it was turned into a film. So we were under contract for the film. It just hadn't been greenlit yet. So I knew that was coming. So there was money coming, And then I started the podcast in January, and I moved in April, and it started to monetize. Like I had like a little bit of money. It was like enough to pay rent, right? And I had like my version of broke is not like I only eat cereal and ramen, right? Like it's just a number that I'm uncomfortable with. Yeah. And yet and still, like I moved to LA. And again, I was like, I have money to get home. Like, well, I have a car. If nothing else, I can drive it across, country for 3 days. Like, I'll get home. But yeah.
Wow, I thank you for sharing that. And it's another thing you said is that entrepreneurship is always kind of this journey of I'm gonna get back up. It's resilience. It is pushing through and trusting yourself. Yeah. And you seem like someone who has a lot of trust in yourself. Like, I'll figure this out. I just hit rock bottom, but you know what? I just need a beat and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a good safety net. Like, one of the reasons that I'm able to take the risks that I do is because my parents are stable.
Yeah.
And there's always a place to go. So, like, my rock bottom is going back to a sprawling house with, all the TVs have all the cable channels, and there's always food in the fridge. So it's that's rock to me.
Yeah.
But I'm able to take a whole bunch of leaps because of that. But also I have a really amazing circle of friends, many of whom are entrepreneurs and were entrepreneurs before me. So like in my head, especially coming from PG, like everyone had a government job or you work in law and then you do something
Public
for the government. It's corporate, like it's all around like politics in some way. So being a creative at the time that I was coming out of, or going into college and coming out, was just very like, what? What are you doing? So my concept of being an entrepreneur was a constant struggle. And then when I moved to New York, I had friends that had really good jobs, in corporate, doing whatever, and they would quit and do something else. And I remember my best friend, he was a DJ and he quit to do that full time. And then he also started doing the audio, which is where the real money is. So he shows up to dinner one day and he has on like this fresh Rolex. And I was like, you making like rolling money, P? Like, and he was like, yeah. And he was like, well, because I own my own, I'm not like, building somebody else's dream. I'm building my own. And like, now I've got, these watches, plural. And I was like, oh, so like the next time it's a different watch. It was more expensive. And I was like, bro, like, is this what entrepreneur life is? And he was like, could be. And I was like, oh. But I knew a bunch of people who had like left their jobs and had been successful. And my thought was like, if I leave this job and I had a cushion and I was like, if I'm not successful, then I'll go back and do the current job that I'm doing. Like I know for sure I know how to do this.
Yeah. So, you can always get a journalism job or a media personality job.
Something. So there's good work at the post office. They got benefits. There's always good work. Well, till today, but like the news, like the. Okay, moving along.
Moving along. So now you're traveling, and now you're going to take people with you. You're always coming up with a new business idea. What? I know people ask for it, but are you ever like, oh my God, I don't want to do that one. I'm not going to do it.
Oh yeah, I say no all the time.
Yeah. So why did you do this one though?
Because going to Ghana really changed my life. It was just very eye-opening. I think people's idea of what Africa looks like, what Black history, Black ancestry looks like is very different than what it actually is. Yeah. Even with Instagram showing more diverse images. Right. Like it is history, it is slave castles, it is parties. It's definitely like 10,000 people on the beach for New Year's. Like that's amazing. I love it. Right. But there's also just like regular life. Like there's just, you go to the restaurant and you get your nails done and you, go to a coffee shop. Like that's a worldwide thing. Right. And I just wanted people to see that and experience for themselves. Like a lot of people like, Africa's far and like people don't know anyone there. You don't know how to navigate it. Yeah. So if I can go and I can take you and you can just be like, oh, it's just like navigating kind of anywhere else. Right. You just need to know like the spots to go to.
And if people are like, it's dangerous, like, yes, it's dangerous everywhere in New York.
It's dangerous than here.
Yeah. Like, no, but that's just like a common, like, fear that people will put in you. But
I wouldn't walk through Central Park at night, but I walk through Ghana after dark and don't think twice about it.
And I love that you say that. I distinctly remember one of my friends asking me one time when I was in my 20s, like, oh, this was before I started traveling a lot. And he was just like, where do you want to go? What's on your bucket list? And I start listing out, Paris and blah, blah, blah. And, this place in Greece and Italy. And he's like, no, Africa? Yeah. And at the time, like, that just blew my mind. I was like, what? So we went on our honeymoon to Tanzania. And so now my list is, I want to go back to Tanzania. I want to head up Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, Seychelles. You know what I mean? And there's just this amount of beauty on the continent that we don't see every day in the tourism space. So I'm so glad that you're doing that, especially for us. Yeah. Like we should want to travel around.
Yeah. Like I've seen jaw-dropping beauty, like unimaginable, like beyond my, like, I don't know, like a mama lion greeting her cubs at sunset. Yeah. Like literally the sun is like setting behind or, the coast of Lamu, like I get on like a canoe, motorized canoe. Calling it a boat is too much. But I've never seen anything like it. It looks like, like ancient Greece on the side of like Africa. Like
it's really like,
I didn't know it existed.
God's wonders. It's really miracles. Like you can't even, like, it just makes you wonder how we all came to be because it's like, how does this exist right here?
Yeah. And then just being in like so many other different cultures and seeing, your culture in them. Like going to Ghana and like, like a pastor had passed away and like the drape was purple and black. And my grandfather was a pastor. And when he died, like the drape was purple and black. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, we're so far removed physically, but we changed so much culture that we don't even realize. Like some things that we think are very Black American or very West African. But we're still connected, even though we have so many divisions and wars. But I was like, if we could just find the commonality, there's actually
and we
a
need
lot
to
there.
see it. So how do you now, as you're moving into 2025, think about the compartmentalizing all of your different ventures and spending time on this continent versus this one?
There's a calendar.
There's a calendar?
There's a calendar.
How far in advance do you plan it out?
I'm planned out until the top of 2026.
Nice. Yeah. I'm impressed.
I drop projects, when I want to travel, when I want to take people on trips, things like that. Like, I literally have a printed out calendar. Like I can't do it in my phone.
Oh, you have a printed out calendar.
I printed it, like it's printed out. And I pencil things in and I have different color Sharpies to like,
Do you see yourself staying in the DMV?
I don't know.
Or coming back to New York?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I like about you, because and like I said, I was inspired by you for how everything came together. I was like, I'm just gonna go with the flow more. Like you can have a plan, but also be open to life leading you where you need to be, right? Because we need to have this conversation and let the people know.
No, it's very chaotic, just FYI. Like it's, and I was one of those people that was very, very rigid. Like I lived in the same apartment.
Oh, I'm fighting with that
like
right
15
now.
years, right? And I loved having people at my place. And my thing was I always wanted people to know where the spoons were and where the ketchup was. Like I liked being the stable friend. I've had the same phone number since 2000. Like I never changed my phone. Like, but I liked being that friend until, I don't know. I was like, what am I being rigid for? Like, I don't have a husband. I don't have kids. I have money. I have freedom. Why am I not using it? Like yesterday, somebody on this panel said, like, what's the point in having like a fuck you account if you never say fuck you? Ooh. And I was like, that's a word. That's a word. That'll preach. Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
That is it right there.
Yeah.
And I saw something like a quote on Instagram the other day that was just like, don't forget in the middle of all this to enjoy your life.
Yeah.
Like, enjoy your life. You don't know how much of it you have. Like, don't forget to like go out for coffee, meet people, blah, blah, blah.
And still gallivant.
We can strive for goals, but so that's really where I am now. I just want to focus more on enjoyment in between all of the chasing of the dreams.
Yes.
And, I want to see some more world.
Yes.
And I am very inspired by how you're taking on the world. So tell us about the book, your third book that's coming.
I'm working on my third book is called Sawsome World. So my brand, one of my brands is Seasome World. So I've been gallivanting for the last 2.5 years. And Sawsome World is the coffee table book culmination of those adventures. So it's remember Suede magazine from back in the day? So I love Suede. It's only like 4 issues. Like I never got a chance to write from it before. It was like one of the most beautiful magazines. Yeah. So we're taking some inspiration from Suede, which basically look like a what are those boards people do? Not a Pinterest. Vision board. Thank you. Yeah. So it's like a vision board. So it looks like, things that are taped and things that are, with the thumbtack and all of those. But it's very much collagey, but it's all the pictures. It's the letters to my mom. It's some stories I've never shared. But it's also like if you want to open it up, you want to be a guidebook. Yeah. You want to go to some place and want to know where to get like the best, I don't know, rosé, martini, whatever you want, whatever I'm drinking at the time. Margarita with no salt. Like I could tell you where to do that in like any country that I've been to.
Nice.
So,
I'm excited for the coffee book aspect for sure. That's different and that's nice to have like something like on the table from a Black woman. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm biased.
Yeah. So we're going to do a quick lightning round where you just answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm very disjointed. I'm just warning you in advance.
Okay, so number 1, think about top of mind, like what's a top resource that you're using these days in your business that you can share with us?
TikTok.
Yeah. Oh,
whenever I want to research and find out, like, what's cute, what's good, what's interesting. Like I want to go to a place and I want to know, like, I don't know, where to get a good drink, where to dance all night, what the best beach is. TikTok. Yeah, it was Pinterest before that.
Yes. All right. Number 2, now, who is a Black woman entrepreneur, non-celebrity, who you would want to switch places with for a day just to get inside her head?
Oh, my bestie, Angel Gregoria. She does the Spice Suite in DC.
Oh, yes. I've interviewed her.
But she's got like spices. Yes, she's been on your show.
She's amazing.
She's got like spices. She's got like, I don't know, like, what is it called? Kind of cutting boards, like in the shape of Africa.
Yeah,
like
I have her. Yeah. her kitchenware. Yes.
Like cast iron skillets. Like she looks like she's having a ball all the time, and she's always doing. Like my favorite thing about talking to her is like I talked to her in January, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking about whatever." And then I talked to her about April, and she's like, "Yeah, so we just like bought some land."
Yeah, she bought some
like
land.
She like her the way she moves, and I was like, it also she keeps me on my toes because I feel like I don't ever want to show up and be like, "Oh yeah, you were talking about what happened." I'm like, "Oh, I ain't done nothing with that."
Yep.
Like I always feel like I have to,
It's almost like an accountability.
She's like an accountability partner, but just by living her really great life.
Yes.
And like wearing glitter all the time. Like I always tease her. Like she wears fur to the grocery store, and I'm just like that's. I'm like I was like as she should, right? Like I mean, it's an occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like I would like to wear fur to the grocery store and more glitter.
Chat with her again soon. Yeah. Number 3, what's a non-negotiable part of your day these days?
I make lists every night before bed of what I need to do the next day.
Okay.
Because I have 50 million things to do, and I just get scattered.
Yeah.
So I try to like very rigorously when I get up, like go through the list.
Yeah.
And then I'll go through the BSing of my day after that.
Number 4, what is a personal trait that you believe has helped you become so successful?
I laser focus in on things. So like when I need to do something, like there's no, like I'm either doing a bunch of nothing or I'm doing all the things all at once. I'm in an all the things all at once phase.
Okay.
But like it's nothing to me to like work like 18, 20 hours. Like when it's like when I have to get the merchandise out, like it's not just me, but like I'm with my team.
Okay.
And if I'm asking them, they're working in shifts, but I'm asking them to like, give it 100. Yeah. Then I show up for 100 and then some to do all that. Like I think that's what makes a good leader, a good manager. Like you want to work for someone who's doing it with you as opposed to someone who's like, you over there.
Right.
What are you doing over there?
Stuff for you to do.
Like,
And then finally, what's your parting advice for fellow side hustlers who are interested in entrepreneurship or even working on something but are just worried about uncertainty?
Do it scared. Do it scared. And whatever it is, like whatever you're passionate about, like tailor it so it's filling some void in the space.
Yeah.
Like there's no sense in reinventing the wheel, but if you have something to say, maybe somebody's saying it, but they're not saying it the right way to be heard for it to make an impact, then say it. Okay. If you want to build something, like, do it slightly different, that it stands out from what someone else is doing. But fill the void. Whatever the thing is that you want that is not there, that you see that, like, oh, there's a need for that. Like there are other people who think that there's a need for it in the way that you envision it.
Yeah.
Everything I've ever done that's been successful is filling some sort of void that I think exists. And then, whoa, other people think so too.
Yeah. And I love that statement because we should all say that to ourselves. Like everything I've ever done will be successful. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Where can people connect with you after this?
You can follow me on social media. Everything is at Demetria L. Lucas, 2 L's, or my website, demetriallucas.com.
All right, guys. And there you have it. Listen and watch Side Hustle Pro at Side Hustle Pro everywhere. All righty. And with that, we're done. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Side Hustle Pro. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other side hustlers just like you to find the show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Side Hustle Pro. Plus, sign up for my 6-bullet Saturday newsletter at sidehustlepro.co/newsletter. When you sign up, you will receive weekly nuggets from me, including what I'm up to, personal lessons, and my business tip of the week. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/newsletter to sign up. Talk to you soon.